Alright guys, this might be the most exciting handheld of the year so far for me, and possibly of the entire year. It is the Retroid Pocket 5. Let's take a look. This unit was graciously sent over to me by Stubbs at Retro Handhelds. I'll leave a link to their YouTube down in the description and a full review that I will be doing on their channel, which will probably be releasing before this unboxing. Just as a courtesy, this is a review unit that was sent over by Retroid to the Retro Handhelds group for review. No money changed hands there, but their opinions are their own, and Stubbs is just loaning this to me, but there is no commitment for me to give any particular opinion on this device. So even though I did not pay for this, my opinions won't be biased, and I actually spent $200 of my own money to buy one of these, and that'll be arriving here in a couple weeks. So once that arrives, I'll have a lot more content coming out for the Retroid Pocket 5. Besides the handheld, the box just contains the usual stuff. We got a little owner's manual and a USB-C cable. Nothing super exciting there, so let's get that out of the way. And let's focus back on the main event here. And boy, is this one shiny boy. I personally don't mind the all-front glass aesthetic. Some people are turned off by it, so your mileage may vary there. But I think overall this is a pretty good looking handheld, and even compared to the Retroid Pocket Mini, maybe a little bit classier looking. In fact, they both sort of harken back to the good old PS Vita for some styling, especially with the Retroid Pocket 5 and these little cutouts with the plastic and the glass. Very reminiscent of the Vita. So you guys are seeing this handheld at the same time I am. I just got this from Stubbs. I did take it out of the box once. It's not true unboxing, so that I could charge it because it did arrive with a low battery, but I haven't set it up or anything. So we're going to go through some setup and some initial thoughts and just tinker around with this and get to know the Retroid Pocket 5 a little bit. All right, so let's get this bad boy set up. First off, for setup, we're going to connect to Wi-Fi. Nothing special there. On the next screen, it's going to ask us to set our time zone. We're going to go ahead and enable Google Play services because I am going to be using some apps from the Play Store. And I'm not going to do any of the pre-installed apps on here, and we're going to walk through the apps that I typically install on these devices. As far as the launcher, there's the basic Retroid Pocket 5 launcher, which is not the new launcher that they've shown off in videos. This one's okay, but I'm just going to go with the stock Android for now, and we're going to look at ESDE as a launcher when we get this all set up. And that's really it as far as getting it initially set up. Just going to open this up so I can get white to adjust screen brightness to the camera here. And I'm going to sign into the Play Store. This is taking an exceedingly long time. Well, that was a lot of time for nothing. Let's try that again. Okay, apparently it's actually signed in even though it said it failed. So, cool. Okay, and then ahead of time, I've got this 1TB micro SD card set up. I had this in some previous devices, my tablet, my Y700, so it's pretty much ready, set, and loaded to go, so I'm just going to pop that in here after I get off the struggle bus. Flaps nice and flush here, not like the RP Mini with that little ridge that I had, although some people that received later units said that they didn't feel that, and mine wasn't a development unit, or a pre-production unit, so maybe it was something that they changed on the production line part of the way through. So before we get all the hardware set up, let's just kind of take a look at the device. You know, as I already mentioned, it's got that all glass front with the plastic cutout around the buttons and the D-pad. We've got our front-facing speakers down here, our typical Retroid joysticks. We've got start and select up top, always nice to see. Home button and a back button, all the standard stuff. Pretty nice little improvement here is that if you can see, the triggers are smooth on the Mini, and they have kind of this knurling on the Retroid Pocket 5, so there's a nice little bit of extra premium build quality touch there. Nice to see. On the back, we've got the plastic. Feels pretty nice. Not too hollow, fairly sturdy. I mean, compared to the Mini, it's not that much different. The Retroid Pocket 5, I think, has a little bit better texture on it, just slightly less smooth. And the bumps have a little bit of a knurling on those as well, whereas they're smooth on the Mini. There's a little bit of a difference there. Got a large fan intake all across the back, and an input or output there as well for the fan. Volume and power, micro SD headphone, and USB-C on the bottom. No HDMI port or anything like that, but this should be able to output USB-C DisplayPort alt mode over the port down here, so that's not really a concern. It does pick up smudges a little bit. I'm doing a lot of setups, so I'm going to touch the screen a lot more than you might during normal use, so it may seem a little exaggerated, but yeah, it is a thing. But overall, yeah, this feels nice. It's pretty comfortable. I can already tell that maybe using the joysticks won't be the best part of this device, but you know, it's pretty comfortable to grip up here. Let's take a look at the Mini again. Comparing a few things. The buttons on the Retroid Pocket 5 are better. Now I did mod my Mini buttons. They might look kind of lopsided in this video because I trimmed down the membrane to make them quieter. They were quite loud upon arrival. In fact, the buttons were my biggest miss on the Mini. The Retroid Pocket 5 buttons are definitely better. They have a little bit more of a matte texture and just a slight bit more of a domedness to them, if you will. As far as size goes, we could take a look. Buttons on the Mini are 7.5. No, they're the same size, but they do feel a little bit better on this one. A little less noisy. They're not the quietest buttons, but these wouldn't bother me as much as they do on here. So definitely good to see that. D-pad, very similar. The Mini also had some pretty clicky shoulders. And I think that it's about the same. I did also install some tape mods on my Mini, so not really valid to show that particular unit against this. But yeah, it feels good. Not bad at all. So let's start setting this up. I'm going to show you what I normally do when I get an Android device and all the apps that I put on it. Now there are some more streamlined methods like Obtainium, where it's sort of an app that downloads from repositories like GitHub for you and install it automatically and keep them up to date on the device. But I'm just going to do it the good old-fashioned, install it your own way, and kind of walk you guys through that. So first up, I'm going to do APKs, or apps that are not available on the Play Store or have a superior version available via download elsewhere. So I'm going to go to my file manager and hop over to the SD card. And I've got my pre-prepared APK folder here, and I'm going to go through a few things. First up here, we've got NetherSX2. NetherSX2 is sort of a fork or semi-continuation of AetherSX2. It's sort of a build your own adventure where you download a file that will run a script to either acquire the APK or patch the APK for you, which removes ads and adds some other nice things like fixing integrations with launchers and stuff like that. So typically the PlayStation 2 app that I go to. ESDE is my launcher of choice. This one is a one-time Patreon payment, but then you get app downloads for the rest of time. They will email you every time there is a new release. So not something you have to continually pay for, and I really enjoy this. It's very similar to the same launcher you would see on most Linux type handhelds out there, as well as it is obviously available on desktop, as the DE stands for Desktop Edition. Vita 3K is our PS Vita emulator. I don't emulate PS Vita as much as some others, but I do want to check it out on this device, especially since it looks so much like a Vita. We're going to install RetroArch. It is the latest download of the stable version from the RetroArch website. It is available on the Play Store, but I think it is slightly outdated versus what you can download, so I'm going to choose to install it from the APK here. As far as Switch emulation goes, I do have Yuzu here. This is the last public build that they released. You're on your own to find this one. There are various forks of Yuzu out there, which may or may not have changes other than just some modified changelogs. It's really kind of a minefield out there. I don't know that there's been a significant enough improvement on any of those forks to warrant using them, but certainly there are other options. You know, unfortunately, we're not seeing any new development there. And for Switch, I had been using the last Citra nightly, but I've been told to check out Lime3DS, so we're going to install that one today. And actually, recent news in the emulation world, both Lime3DS and Pablo MK7 were forks of the original Citra, and they're now going to join forces and do a combined build. So this is actually the last build of Lime3DS before it gets merged into one new super project. That about does it for the emulator apps that I need to install and sideload like this. So let's hop over to the Play Store. First up, we're going to grab Dolphin Emulator for GameCube and Wii. At the time of this video, the Play Store version is the same as the latest stable release of Dolphin. There are newer nightlies and betas that you can download from the site, but I'm just going to go with stable version here. I'm going to download ReDream for Dreamcast emulation. There is the Flycast core for RetroArch, but I find that ReDream tends to be faster, I believe, and I overall like using it. There is a free version with no upscaling and a couple other small features I think that aren't available. I think it's a minimum of a $6 one-time payment to get premium unlocked on all platforms. I went ahead and paid that quite a while ago, so I do have the premium version of that. Next one is not strictly necessary, as this device I'm sure has the power to emulate Nintendo 64 through RetroArch, but I am still going to do M64 Plus FZ emulator, which does run games a little faster in general. The Pro version is actually free through Play Pass, or $4 if you buy it. I think all that does is remove some ads and add some net play. Otherwise, most features are intact between both the free and the Pro version. Next up, we're going to do one of the greatest emulators of all time, PPSSPP. This one is totally free, and the premium version has absolutely nothing different about it, but it's so good I have given the developer my money to get the gold edition and have that gold icon, because we should support our community developers. Another one that's optional is going to be DuckStation, which is our PlayStation 1 emulator. Again, this device has the power to do it through RetroArch cores, but I just like the interface and speed of DuckStation. I think that about does it for emulators. I'm just going to install two other somewhat related to gaming apps here, and the first one is going to be Moonlight game streaming, so that we can test that out at some point. Perhaps not in today's video, but stay tuned and you will see a video that contains it, maybe over on the Retro Handhelds channel. And last up, I like to install Gamepad Tester just for my review purposes, the one with the purple icon. You see it in all of my videos where I feature Android devices. As you can see, we got a bunch of emulators here. Usually I like to tidy these up into some folders. I'm just going to do that really quickly. I'm not keeping this unit. I have to send it back to another member of the Retro Handhelds team, so I might not go quite in depth in setting this unit up as I would my own personal one, which I did purchase and will arrive in a couple weeks here. Ideally, we're not really ever going to have to go into these individual apps after the initial setup, because we're going to launch them through ESDE. In fact, I'm going to drag that over to the first home screen because that's something I'm going to use commonly. And I'm going to put Gamepad Tester over there just because I'm going to use it during the review. And that's all I'm going to do for now in terms of organization and installation. Normally I would remove a lot of these icons, but again, this is not my permanent device, so I'm not going to worry too much about that right now. One other thing that we really need to make these emulators work is BIOSes. And I'm not going to tell you where to get those. You should have your own backups. Figure that out. But I have pre-prepared my backup set on the SD card so that I can install them. And I'm just going to go ahead and do that part off camera and get them copied over. Just know that you have BIOS folders that need to go into your RetroArch system folder for all the cores in RetroArch to run, and then the various emulators such as NetherSX and DuckStation will need their own BIOSes loaded. Some of the emulators such as M64 Pro, PPSSPP, and ReDream do not require a BIOS to work. Before we copy over the BIOSes, I think we need to start up RetroArch once, and we're going to give it storage permissions. And then we're going to do online updater, and the first thing I always do is I just go down the line and make sure everything here is updated, all of our shaders, cores, assets, information, etc. And then we need to download the cores that we're going to be using. Usually I'm not super specific, I just kind of tap on all the ones that I think I might be using, but you can be more picky if storage is a premium. A couple other things we might want to do with RetroArch is just set up our input and make sure that that's going on. Usually the RetroPad binds are fine on their own, but you may need to set them up. I think we're okay. I do like to set up a couple hotkeys, usually for enable. I'm going to go with select, which is showing up as mouse 1 for a strange reason. What's going on here? You know what? This is a RetroArch bug. I know about this one. We have to use the buttons to set them. Can't use the touch screen. It'll register a mouse touch. Oh, and then I usually do fast forward. You can set them all up, your save states and everything. Actually, let's do that. We'll do fast forward as R2, and we'll put our save and load states on the two bumpers. And then we'll just want to make sure that we properly quit to save that. For Dolphin, we're just going to point it at our games directory on the micro SD card here. I'm not going to set up Wii today, but you would do the same thing. We can go into settings while that's happening, and we're mostly going to look at GameCube input. Hit the little cog here, Retroid Pocket controller, and I'm going to go ahead and set this up in kind of a weird way, but A, B, X, Y makes sense with the way the original GameCube controller was laid out. I'm thankful that some emulators have auto mapping, but Dolphin does not. Other than the controller, let's just check the graphics setting. We're gonna leave an OpenGL for this device for the most part. And on enhancements, we're just gonna do 3x. Some games may require 2x, but a good chunk will run at 3x, so we're just going to leave it there. And I like to turn on some statistics for while we're doing our testing. Okay, that's Dolphin. Next up, we got Lime3DS here. Very similar style of setup. I'm going to grant permissions for a couple things here. I'm going to select our user data folder. If you've used it in the past, you can select the existing data folder. Let me see if it actually works with Citra, and perhaps it'll load some of my pre-configured stuff. Similar to other emulators, we're going to find the ROMs folder on our SD card. And you can have the ROMs internally too, but this only has 128 gigs internal, so I think a large SD card is the way to go. The only other really thing we need to do, we could install other GPU drivers, but I don't think we're going to need those for 3DS. Not right now anyways. We do want to double check gamepad here. It's not configured, so here we are going to go with standard Nintendo layout. A couple handy hotkeys I like to set up when I'm doing dual screen emulation is swap screens on one of L3 or R3 and cycle layouts on the other one. Makes it nice while you're playing the game to be able to fiddle around. So we're set up there. NetherSX2. Again, we're going to go through our permission screens. We're going to leave it at the optimal defaults. We do need to find a BIOS, which I need to extract actually. Add our game directory once again. And for settings, really I'm only just going to go to graphics. I'm going to change that to, it's going to be somewhere between 2 and 3x depending on the game. And then as far as widescreen, I'm not going to change any settings globally because that's going to be something you want to set per game depending on whether the game has native widescreen or whether you want to use a hack or whether you just want to leave it as 4:3. You can leave it as auto. You can force 4:3, although we don't usually need that unless the game is behaving oddly. But widescreen is something that you may want to force if it's a game that has a widescreen option in the built-in menu, like God of War. You turn on widescreen in the game and then you select widescreen here to make sure that it is appropriate. And then we also want to double check our controller settings. We're going to turn off touchscreen view and we're going to do automatic mapping, and hopefully that's all we need. We'll close out of that for now. If you've already paid before, you just tap the upgrade to premium and ReDream will load. We just need to add our ROMs directory here. Set up our controls. Looks like they're already bound. We may need to mess with those if they're not totally correct, but we'll leave those for now. Game resolution, we're going to tap that a couple times. Do 1920 by 1440, which might be a little bit over for 4:3, but if we're going to be doing anything widescreen, we'll want that. Oh, it did add the directory. It just looked weird. Okay, so we got that set up. Again, we're going to do our stuff. You need to dump some keys files from your Switch in order to access the games. And we're going to go to our ROMs folder yet again. As far as settings here, we shouldn't need to touch anything with graphics. We may toggle between handheld and docked while playing, but we don't want to change the multiplier. So I think really the only thing we need to double check is controller, make sure that's mapped. That's pretty much it for Switch. DuckStation, it's going to be just like NetherSX for the most part. Let's do 5x for 1080p here. And we do need to grab a BIOS, which I will borrow from my RetroArch folder. We'll add our ROM directory for the millionth time here. It's going to scan all of our games real quick. And just like before, turn off touchscreen, map our controller. We already set the resolution, so we're done here. RetroArch we kind of already did. We did 3K. I'm going to skip for this video today because it requires some extra steps. M64 Plus, we don't really need to do anything other than add our ROMs folder and potentially map the controller. All right, once that is done, you'll be greeted with some glorious Nintendo 64 cover art, taking you back to when you were 13 years old, if you are my age. Anyways, we're going to change our resolution under the display to 1920 by 1440. And then the input always trips me up on this because it requires profiles. You know, I think if we just use Xbox controller and then the Xbox mapping here, it'll be easiest for everyone. Controller 1 profile, we're going to say Xbox. That should be all we need here. And then last up we have PSP with PPSSPP. You can create or choose a folder. I already have used this card for PSP, so I'm going to select the PSP folder that I already have here. And it's going to import some of my configuration settings, but still a new device, so we still need to set where our ROMs are. Hop over to settings, set to 6x PSP for some reason. We'll do 4x, which is exactly 1080p. Should have no problems running that on this device. Let's double check that we have controls mapped. It looks like they are. One thing we turn on, FPS counter and speed, I do have on already. So we're set up there. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to set up ESDE. It's going to ask for your storage permissions. I'm going to allow access to all files and go back. Select the application data directory. You can create a new one. I recommend creating your data directory on your SD card if you have one, because then if you do change devices, you can just move the SD card over or copy your ESD directory and keep your configurations, which is what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to use the ESDE folder on my SD card that I had previously set up on another device. I'm going to allow access. We're going to select our ROMs directory. This time it's a little easier because we're just going to the base ROMs directory. If this was the first time, you would go ahead and create the system directories. That creates all the different console names so that you can plop your ROM files into there. I already have those on this card, so I'm going to go ahead and just skip it this time. And that's about it for the initial setup. All right, now that we've got the initial setup done, let's just do a quick configuration. I went ahead and already downloaded a theme off camera. Let's use a colorful theme to show off the vibrant OLED display on this device. Then we're going to go to other settings, and I just want to show you real quick the alternative emulator. The default lighter gray color are the default selections in ESDE, and then the ones that are a little bit brighter are the ones that I have chosen. I've chosen a few different standalone emulators to replace the defaults here. We've got ReDream here, Dolphin, Citra, which should hopefully launch Lime3DS, M64 Plus, PPSSPP, DuckStation, and all the rest should be the defaults. Colors really pop on this screen. It's nice to see. So the nice thing is now that we already set up those emulators and did that dirty work, we can just work from our front end and not have to worry about launching into the emulators for the most part. Every once in a while you need to get in there and configure something, but it's pretty nice. So let's just go ahead and pop into a game real quick and take a look at this display. The nice thing also about using an SD card with ESDE pre-configured is if you've got your ROM collection already scraped, you don't have to re-scrape it on a new device, and you can just kind of copy that over when you need to. I've always been terrible at Contra games, so why not? Man, boy, does that OLED display look pretty freaking awesome. If you set up your hotkey combo to select and start like I have, to exit, just hit that twice and you'll quit out right back to the ESDE launcher, so a really nice way to have all your games all set up in the launcher here. Let's try some PSP because that's going to look too good on this display. And let's just wipe off the screen real quick. I don't know if you guys can see that on camera, but it looks a little smudgy over here from doing all that setup work. I do need to switch over to the Xbox layout so that my buttons are right here for PlayStation, otherwise it's not correct. Oh man, this has got to be like the best PSP device ever. I don't know. Well, I mean, the Retroid Pocket Air does do a similar thing and handles PSP just fine, so that did exist before this, and the RG556, to be fair, also does this whole 5.5-inch OLED thing. But I'd say this D-pad is probably better than the RG556, and the joysticks as well. Joysticks are also better than the Pocket Air. But the RG556 doesn't have quite as much power, and it does have cardinal snapping on the joysticks. Alright, well, I'll be here all day if I keep playing that, so we'll get into some gameplay demonstrations and tests in future videos. And then real quick, I just kind of wanted to go over the inputs here. Everything does feel nice and smooth. Joysticks have no issues, there's no cardinal snapping. Yeah, it's good. I'm pretty impressed so far. The triggers are nice and smooth, full range, no problems there. A little bit twitchy at the end, but nothing too crazy. Shouldn't affect gameplay at all. And let's take a quick look at the screen, the real centerpiece here. Yeah, it looks nice. I'm getting that full range of colors, no issue. Good levels of light and dark. We can see full range here. Yeah, it is good. Let's see how loud the Sport Fan is on this one. It's much less offensive than the Retroid Pocket Mini, but it's still kind of annoying. A little bit of a high-pitched whine. But yeah, to sum up, I'm really liking the Retroid Pocket 5 so far. I'm looking forward to making some more videos showing off the performance and capabilities of this device. It feels good. I don't have any initial complaints about the buttons. The shoulders are a little bit clicky annoying, but I could probably live with it. The buttons are a lot less annoying than on the Mini, and the D-pad's still just as nice. Yeah, this is a nice piece of hardware, pretty comfortable. We'll see how it is when I try out some longer joystick gaming sessions, but hopefully that gave you a good idea of how to get your Retroid Pocket 5 set up when it arrives in a couple weeks here. Again, stay tuned to the channel. By the time this video drops, I will have a full-length in-depth review over on the Retro Handhelds channel, so I'll have a link to that down in the description for you to check out. And as well, stay tuned and subscribe to this channel so you can see future videos. I just released a Retroid Pocket 4 Pro versus Retroid Pocket 5 comparison, in-depth performance deep dive video, as well as I do plan on various game tests, some with this pre-production review unit and some with the retail unit that I purchased when that arrives in a couple weeks here, provided there aren't any more delays. So I hope this helped you out, and as always, thanks for watching and happy gaming.